To build back better, we must reinvent capitalism. Here's how. From the World Economic Forum, the pandemic has brought into focus many of the vulnerabilities in our system and institutions, but it also offers us a chance to shape a more resilient and sustainable world. Here's how businesses and policymakers can start building the green and inclusive future we need. Thanks to the ongoing pandemic, the world is off balance, and it will remain so for years to come. Far from settling into the new normal, we should expect a coof domino effect triggering further disruptions, positive as well as negative, over the decade ahead. The wave of civil unrest that spread across America and beyond recently may be one example. It seems likely that the pandemic contributed to the context in which anger and despair boiled over into the outrage and unrest following the death of George Floyd. Other possible COVID-induced discontinuities ahead range from a full-blown financial crisis to a step change in the rate of the global energy transition. Some analysts now reckon that fossil fuel demand may have peaked in 2019 for good. The virus has highlighted many vulnerabilities within businesses, supply chains, economies, health systems, and political institutions that will need to be addressed in a post-crisis world. It is understood that the interconnectedness of our natural, social, and economic systems and provide a stark reminder of the scale of systemic risk that can build up when we allow weakness and negative impacts to accumulate over time. An inclusive and green recovery is vital if we are to create more resilient economies and a world in which business can thrive, not just now, but long into the future. There are positive signs that in some countries, bailouts and stimulus packages have been designed with these criteria in mind. But this is by no means universal. It seems inevitable that some governments will repeat the mistakes made in the aftermath of 2007-2008 financial crisis when, in many cases, the policies adopted post-crisis exacerbated inequality and locked in unsustainable outcomes. A true recovery from the coof will not be about putting things back together the way they were. We need to build back better, to reset. If we are to address the deep systemic vulnerabilities and pandemic has exposed, for businesses, building back better is about much more than corporate social responsibility. It's about truly aligning markets with natural, social, and economic systems on which they depend. It is about building real resilience, driving equitable and sustainable growth, and reinventing capitalism itself. Welcome, folks. This is All Minus One. My name is Bill. Please hit that like, share, hit that like button, share, subscribe. You know the thing. You know the thing, man. Come on, man. You know the thing. Hey, go over here to Rumble, guys. I got this up and running now. Give me a sub over on Rumble. Help me grow there, because eventually YouTube will not let me talk about the things that I talk about. Also, gonna plug it now. Got the show, The Unjustified Memes. We go live every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. You can check me out there with my co-host and sometimes other folks every Wednesday, 7 p.m. And we'll be doing some Christmas memes tomorrow night and talking some new stuff and probably some stuff that I've talked about or will be talking about throughout the week. So with all that, let's build back better, folks. Let's build back better. And let's look at some politicians right in line with this globalist nonsense.
Better means getting support to the most vulnerable while maintaining our momentum on reaching the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the SDGs. Canada is here to listen and to help. This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset. This is our chance to accelerate our pre-pandemic efforts to reimagine economic systems that actually address global challenges.
word for word what the World Economic Forum says. Folks, call me a conspiracy theorist all you want. These are puppet governments. These are puppets for globalists and corporatists. I'm going to play this one more time.
Building back better means getting support to the most vulnerable while maintaining our momentum on reaching the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the SDGs. Canada is here to listen and to help. This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset. This is our chance to accelerate our pre-pandemic efforts to reimagine economic systems that actually address global challenges like extreme poverty, inequality, and climate change.
What did all this say? Pretty much that. I didn't even read the whole thing. Resilience, future growth, future-proofing capitalism. We're not running on a capitalist model, folks. This is a centralized economy with centralized banks. That is a left-wing ideology, if you would. That is a left-wing economic ideology. Here we have Pope Francis. To help our society to build back better, inclusion of the vulnerable must also entail efforts to promote their active participation. And then people going, amen, Father, amen. 1, he's a man. 2, unbiblical position, completely. Christ never said that there would be a pope. 3, there is no vicar of Christ on earth. That means literally he represents Christ on earth, which is blasphemy. And you folks out there, you got to get away from the Catholic Church, folks. Sorry, I'm not like, if you believe in God and, the Bible and other stuff, cool, whatever. I don't really care what your religion is, generally speaking, as long as you don't come after me. But the Pope is just a political puppet. He's just a political position to control your mind. The papacy is a heretical and evil organization. All right, that's enough of that. But here we have buildbackbetter.gov. This is Joe Biden and all his plans on economic recovery and building back better. Remember, he started picking up that phrase a while back. You do a little Google search real quick and buildbackbetter.gov. About the transition. Joe Biden, build back better. Build back better for American workers. Guys, this is all the World Economic Forum. How can Biden fulfill his Build Back Better agenda? Man. Building back better. An action plan for the media, entertainment, and cultural industry. So this is the World Economic Forum basically saying, hey, you guys in the media and in Hollywood, you need to get on board. And if I Google search Build Back Better, World Economic Forum, this is the result that I got. So we have over 100 million results. And we go down here, there's article after article after article from the World Economic Forum saying build back better. And then here, unicef.org. It's a whole PDF. Reimagine our future. Build back better. But I'm just a crazy conspiracy theorist. Here, we have Boris Johnson. Build back better. And then this idiot in The Guardian. Build back better. Johnson's government has no interest in tackling inequality. I sure showed him. No, you didn't show him anything. You're just part of the scheme. You're part of the whole thing. You're just saying that, Johnson doesn't believe it. Ooh, he's an evil Nazi. The slogan beloved by politicians from Bill Clinton to Boris Johnson is all too often a cover for crony capitalism. Okay, crony capitalism does not exist. It's a made-up term by leftists. Capitalism simply means that you own something. The first thing that you own is yourself. The second thing that you own is your labor. You, every single one of you, are capitalist by nature. This isn't crony capitalism. It is corporatism or soft fascism, as Ron Paul would put it. Also, you could say that, hey, it's a little the commie stuff. I covered that a few weeks back about the 10 planks of communism and how that it is pretty much implemented today in all of our supposedly free societies. Or they use the word mixed economies. There's no such thing, guys. It's either centralized or it's decentralized. And we are in a centralized economy in the United States and throughout the world. And if you want a decentralized economy and a decentralized currency, you know what happens? The United States will bomb you and destroy your nation. It's true. Happened to Libya. So here, this is from the Federal Reserve Bank. This is all part of Building Back Better, folks. Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System, the Federal Reserve, the central bank of the United States, provides the nation with a safe, flexible, and stable monetary and financial system. That is a load of bull. There's nothing safe, flexible, or sustainable about how the Federal Reserve works. So if we go down here, these are the Federal Reserve 2021 print note orders. And what's really important, we can look at these little graphs and all that they have here, not that big of a deal. But what's really important is this. In the fiscal year 2021, print order 7.6 to 9.6 billion notes is an increase of 1.7 to 3.8 billion notes, or 30.6 to 65.9% from the fiscal year order 2020. Now, that means that of all the money they just pumped out, the 35% in the last year of all money printed, they're going to up that by another 30 to 65% this coming year in 2021. This is how we build back better, folks, by destroying the American economy in order to allow other superpowers to rise. And everyone from Justin Trudeau to Pope Francis to Boris Johnson and Joe Biden are in on the scheme, as well as the media and cultural industries. Folks, I want to remind you that despite what I read to you in the very beginning there, that the WHO itself, which I'm not a fan of in any way, shape, or form, but the WHO itself is against lockdowns. This is from the WHO and their stance on lockdowns, and that it should only be used as a last resort. This is an article from them about the coronavirus and herd immunity lockdowns. Now, this I used the other day because I kind of want to get into this and what building back better actually means, what it's really about. And it's really about controlling you and the elites doing whatever they want. So yesterday I used this chart to show how that the arguments about the excess death rates between a certain demographic group of 25 to 44-year-olds was a bunch of media hooey, which it is, because that trend had been going up for a while. But what's important to note here is the dates, say from 1950 to 2102. This is a projection from the UN. They literally believe this is going to be the rate of death as time comes. That it dropped. It has never exceeded this rate all the way back in the 1950s. And all of a sudden, it's going to rise again. Why do they say this? Because they believe that, global warming or something's going to happen. I don't know. Let's see in real time here if we can take this back. Yeah, I won't go back past the 1950s. But again, so this is 2050. They expect there to be a huge amount of death and suffering. I wonder why. Is it because of anthropogenic global warming? Climate change, as they call it? No, I don't think so. I think it's because they think that by 2030, they're going to have complete control over all of the world economies and how people can do anything. That kind of line from the book of Revelations that no man can buy or sell unless they have the mark. But, I'm just little Alex Jones over here. So anyways, I read to you this report yesterday from the CDC finding nearly 300,000 excess deaths during the pandemic, except for that's not true. It is not true at all. Over here, John Miller has the data on his Twitter page. That is at MillerStream. And I believe, I haven't checked, but I believe that is a pinned comment. Let's check that out so I can keep this accurate for you all. It sure is. So, despite what the U.S. News and World Report stated, ABC News a year prior stated that that age of 25 to 44 had seen an increase in mortality, in morbidity, that is, based on suicides, homicides, and overdoses. And that this trend had been on the rise for a while, as this data shows here. Can't really correlate that with the coof now, can we? So I went through all that yesterday. Here we can look at specifically, though, this chart I brought up from the CDC.gov. This is 2017 data. And this is all age groups that they measure. So you have this middle age group here. You have this young adult age group here. And, teens and very young adults. What we see here, which would make sense, is that suicide rates are high in this group. And I talked about this a little bit yesterday, that homicide rates are high in this group as well. This is where most of the crimes are committed. There's a lot of suicidal teenagers, young people, because it's an unstable time in your life. Emotions run high. But there is also a high suicide rate here at 10% in the ages of 25 to 44. And it doesn't really talk about overdoses here. It talks about unintentional injuries. It doesn't really talk about homicides here. It's 6%, but it's not as high as over here. But it doesn't get into the overdoses or any of that stuff. It just has a little other category. And then once we get over to 45 to 64, we see suicides have relatively dropped to only 3% of all-cause mortality. So this is something, people get either more mentally stable as they get older, or they're already dead, or whatever it is. So this is something we see with people who are younger, who are generally less emotionally stable. Now, why do I bring this up? Because I'm going to show you some data about suicide rates and how they've been changing in our current quasi-lockdown state. And this is directly contrary to what I just read to you at the beginning here from the World Economic Forum, because the vulnerabilities that were supposedly exposed here are not vulnerabilities in our system. It was all planned. Every ounce of this is planned. Now, you might say, but Bill, they didn't know that this pandemic was going to happen. Well, I don't know. It's kind of weird that they had a little tabletop exercise the month that this started in Wuhan, and decided that they were going to talk about a coronavirus pandemic that would all of a sudden destroy things in the world last October. That was event 201, by the way, folks. You can look it up. A little strange to me. A little strange that in Wuhan they have a lab that does gain of function. Gain of function is essentially a means to which they try to fight viruses by making them super bugs that they can then learn to destroy so they can get rid of other viruses. It seems like a very, very dumb way to go about things. It's like, let's make our enemy as strong as possible, who is always, annoying us. Let's make him as strong as possible. Let's give our little bully some jiu-jitsu lessons and some steroids, and get him in the gym, and then we're going to teach him how to kickbox and give him a gun and a couple knives, and then we're going to see how you can beat him up. How we, it's like, let's pump up our enemy or this thing that we're trying to destroy as much as possible so that we can figure out how to beat other diseases. It's a silly logical process in my mind. You don't go about life like this, folks. You don't make things that are dangerous more dangerous in order to stop less dangerous things. Anyways, I digress. They talk about how all this stuff is, of course, the coof's fault, and it's not, and they know it's not. And it's the same reason why they keep saying, Charles Schwab has said specifically, this is an opportunity. I've shown you these articles before. Of course, you can Google them yourself. But here, again, just so you know, the Washington Post put an article, there's something terribly wrong, and Americans are dying at a younger, alarming rate. That came out last year. So what we're going to do now, we're going to just use the coof as an excuse for all of this stuff. What do we have? Overdose deaths accelerated during the coof. Amazing. Over 81,000 drug overdose deaths occurred in the United States in 12 months. Well, the other articles that I had up here before were trying to say, oh, no, that didn't happen. This had to be because of the coof. No. It's because people are feeling desperate and in despair because their life is being destroyed. We are social creatures. We need to go about our business. And I get it. I preach about, having strength, mental strength, endurance, and all this stuff, and that we need to be a stronger society. Regardless of all of that, and I still hold by that, people have a breaking point. Everyone has a breaking point. No one is unbreakable. I guarantee you I can break you. There's all kinds of stuff that you can do to mentally destroy folks. You just have to have the will to do it. And our leaders, our supposed leaders, our oligarchs, our plutocrats, they have the will to do so. And most of the people don't have the will to resist. So this is the actual CDC study. This was in Breitbart. I had a local news source, took it down though, because I covered all of this yesterday. What I want to talk about, more importantly, is suicide. Because this rate is seemingly going up. So this is worldpopulationreview.com. And this is suicide rates per state. So we can go to any state, and as I click over it, it will take me to the numbers. So in Maine, the rate is 18.9. Total suicides, 274. In Massachusetts, 9.8, 686. And you might say, well, how are they so different? Well, population density, folks. The population's different. But we can just go around. We can see all this stuff. Virginia has a 13.4 rate. West Virginia has a 21.1 rate. And West Virginia has a lot of poverty, folks. A lot of poverty. It's probably why. It's also why it had a lot of overdose deaths. So we can look through all this stuff. And it says the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or the CDC for short, compiled extensive data on the suicide rates of each state in the U.S. The University of Washington also put together their findings on the rates of depression in people nationwide. And after categorizing the response by state, the Institution for Health Metrics and Evaluation reported the desperation rate in each state per 100,000 people. We will show you individual lists and display of suicide rates and numbers and deaths by suicides, the depression rate of people in the U.S. in 2017. So again, this is what happens. This was released in 2020, or for 2020, but it's based on 2017 data because this is how we do things. We go backwards, right? And here we have this chart. We can see where the average is at, and we can see the rest of where everyone else at. And these points correlate to a state. Hopefully you all can see this. I can only make things so big without them getting distorted. So, New York at 8.1, and then it's organized by least to greatest. And the reason for this is, who knows? Could be a great deal of things. But generally speaking, people get desperate and willing to kill themselves when they feel like there is nothing to live for. There is no motivation or driving factors in their lives. And right now, the way the coof looks to a lot of people is exactly that. They're losing their businesses, things that they have worked on their entire lives. And if you're somebody in the know, like me, and you understand that the Federal Reserve is doing very, very dubious things. I mean, I've known about the Federal Reserve's dubious things for 15 years or more now, but just saying. And you are aware of all of the Build Back Better talk and Biden using this as his, slogan. You are going to get very concerned. Maybe you think your politicians don't care about you. Doesn't seem that they do, considering the stimulus they just gave, a whopping $600 while they gave a ton of foreign aid to nations that really don't need our foreign aid. So this is New Wave 3 News. This is an NBC affiliate. Study reveals increase in suicide rates. This was just released on December 3rd, 2020. Well, there we go. It says in Louisville, Kentucky, Wave. Mental health issues are rising among adults during the pandemic. A local family therapist said it's leading to more suicides in nearly all age groups. A CDC report shows more than 40% of U.S. adults say that they have had at least one mental health event, and a percentage of that is leading to suicide. Again, none of your leaders care. Joe Biden talks about being inclusive and building back better. We got to heal the nation. We got to heal the country. Through what? Authoritarianism? By giving money to foreign nations that is just going to accelerate the collapse of the U.S. dollar? Not quite getting it, man. It says Monday, government statistics in Japan reported that more people died from suicide in October than from the coof in all of 2020. The majority were women. During late June, 40% of U.S. adults reported struggling with mental health and substance abuse. To the CDC, 31% reported anxiety and depression symptoms. 13% stated an increased substance abuse. I mean, I've been there. I've been drinking a lot more since we've been locked down. I enjoy my beer, but yeah, it's like can't do much. Stuck in the house a lot. Can't go anywhere. I mean, I can go places, but it's you can't go anywhere without a mask. Technically, even though it's just an edict, it isn't an actual law. It says 26% reported trauma or stress-related disorder symptoms, and 11% say they seriously considered suicide. While safety measures like quarantine and social distancing are proven to reduce spread, that is completely false. There is no proof that quarantines and social distancing are reducing spread, where spread would have stopped a year ago. Or let's say less than a year ago, because we haven't quite been doing this stuff for a year yet. We're getting pretty close, though. What, in March or April? I think West Virginia went down, lockdown, or Maryland did in late March, if I'm not mistaken. So the CDC says the potential for adverse outcomes to suicide risk is high. Yes, of course. And it says our elderly population has a huge number of suicide rate. Yeah, there's a story about a lady in Canada, I believe it was, who euthanized herself because she didn't want to live lonely. Who's consulting these folks? Like, who's consulting the folks who can't see their family? Hey, would you rather die? Would you rather risk getting the coof? Frankly, I think I would, to see my grandchildren, my son or daughter in the future, as I am an elderly person. But this isn't about your mental health or protecting anybody. This is about, this is about control and globalism and psychopaths who run our world. So here from the National Institute of Mental Health, of course, we can't have anything, right? Can't have anything that talks about some sort of other health condition. It doesn't talk about, the coof. This just drives me nuts. I go through all this information all the time, and it's like, oh, disclaimer. I think this is a big, bold red one, too. Yeah, look at that. Oh, we're talking about suicides, but, the coof's the most important thing. Stay scared, you simpletons. Suicide's a major public health concern. Yeah. Definitions. Suicide is a leading cause of death in the United States, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. In 2018, suicide was the 10th leading cause of death overall in the United States, claiming the lives of 48,000 people. Now, if you recall yesterday, we were talking about overdoses. like briefly, we talked about overdoses. And what I was saying about that and the numbers that they were trying to conflate from this report here was a difference of 5 people from the study. In fact, I'll just bring that up real quick. So it was a difference of 5 people. Where is it at? Well, this is actually looks like a different paper, but and it was something like 4,535 something like that had died of overdoses, and another 5 more of supposedly the coof. So that's absurd when then the CDC has numbers like this where it says 81,000 drug overdose deaths. Now, I know not everyone is in that age category of 25 to 44, but those numbers just don't seem right, or they seem much higher now. And then again, like in here, it says the disruption of daily life due to the coof has hit those with substance disorders hard. Yeah, of course. Synthetic opioids, primarily illicit manufacturer fentanyl, appeared to be the primary driver of the increase of overdose death. Yeah. And so forth. But those people aren't necessarily trying to kill themselves. These people are. So it says over 48,000 people killed themselves in 2018. Suicide was the second leading cause of death among individuals between 10 and 34, and fourth leading cause of death among individuals of 35 and 54. There were more than 2.5 times as many suicides in the United States as there were homicides. Yeah, duh. Homicide's not really a big issue in the U.S. except for within certain cities, and usually among certain populations who are in criminal activities. So, let's see if I can get this chart here a little bit bigger. Well, that's the best I'm going to be able to do, folks. So we have age groups and then the actual numbers. So this says there were 8,000 between 25 and 34, and 35 through 44 is another 7,000. So I don't know how the coof deaths and the 4,000s outpaced, as said article would suggest, how that outpaced the suicide rates, where the suicide rates are going up. And then here you have these older folks. This happens a lot with folks who are going into their late 50s. If you study any sort of like behavioral psychology, social work type stuff, you'll see that if they don't have good lives, good connections with their children, they don't have a wife, that kind of stuff, people tend to get suicidal because they don't see a purpose to their life and they're just aging. And then as far as people's within their aging, obviously the numbers of disease goes up, so people die of other things, but there's still a high number of people in their 50s through their 60s who are suicidal. And again, I think that this is quite tragic. Why would we be talking about inclusive societies and all this other stuff when we're willing to absolutely destroy all these folks' lives? Wait a minute. I know why. Because these folks don't care about you. They only care about their agendas. And they care about the earth. Mother Earth, she's so precious. We have to destroy all these people. If these people don't die off, then Mother Earth will be completely destroyed and no one will ever be able to live. The species will become extinct. It's sick. Because instead of trying to actually help the world by, using technology and saying, hey, here's some choice of things, what they're really doing is they're saying, no, you don't get to live, not you. We do, and we get to tell you how to live. And that's not good, folks. It's not good at all. So CDC director compares rate of suicide to coof deaths. This was July 28th, 2020. So it says, for the Centers of Disease Control, Robert Redfield said that in a Bucks Institute webinar that suicides and drug overdoses have surpassed the rate for coof among high school students. Yeah, because high school students really don't die from the coof. It happens, but it's exceedingly rare. But there has been another cost that we've seen, particularly in high schools, Redfield said. We are seeing, sadly, for far greater suicides than we are deaths from COVID. We are seeing far greater deaths from drug overdoses that are above excess that we have had as background than we are seeing the deaths from the coof. So this is why I keep coming back for the overall social being of individuals, and let's all work together and find out how we can find common grounds and get these schools open in a way that people are comfortable and safe. Well, everyone should be comfortable and safe. And of course, this is the rough deaths, according to CDC data. No. 6% of that's the number. The rest of that were excess deaths that didn't exist, as John Miller's data shows from the CDC and others. And like I said, I covered that yesterday. So you can go back and watch the video I did before this one if you haven't seen it yet. It says, most recently publicized federal data records 48,000 deaths from suicide and at least 1.4 million attempts in 2018. And 2019, almost 71,000 people died from drug overdoses. So that's up by 10,000, of course, this year. Where Redfield obtained his data is unknown, although a doctor at the John Muir Medical Center in Walnut Creek, California, claimed that the facility has seen a year's worth of suicide attempts in the last 4 weeks. I remember that report. All this, by the way, folks, was not too long before or around when the doctors came out in California and basically, got banned from YouTube and everywhere. It's fake news. It's not what the World Health Organization says, even though they change their mind every other day. And I think that's a reason why this is an issue, too, that people would be more suicidal or have deaths of despair, because we're talking about conflicting information constantly. Recall Donald Trump is Hitler because he didn't want to go and rule the world as a globalist somehow, even though Hitler's whole plan was to create a master race that ruled the entire world. I've read you the quotes before. I can find them for you again. It's not that hard. Donald Trump is just an anti-globalist and was trying to make American sovereignty in manufacturing good again. And people got on average, $5,000 a year boost in pay, which I've covered that before too. Under the Bush and Obama administrations, it's like $50 or something over the course of freaking 16 years. It was like $100 or something. I forget what it was. It was a minimal amount for the average person. And under Trump, things got way, way better. So here from Kentucky, stands for Kentucky, WKYT. Study reveals increased suicidal rates across the U.S. This is December 4th, 2020. It says mental health issues are on the rise, blah, 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 blah. During late June, 40% of all U.S. adults reported struggling with mental health issues. I basically covered this already. But I'm just saying, the information is out there. Then we have this weird one I found. But to be fair, I'm bringing it up. It says fewer people are dying by suicide in St. Louis during the pandemic. Okay. Even though the coof has disrupted lives, making more people anxious and depressed, but a spike in suicides hasn't played out in St. Louis. Well, good for you, St. Louis. Probably too motivated by rioting and stuff. President Donald Trump, for one, has argued public health orders that closed businesses are prompting more people to kill themselves. Oh, it's Trump's fault that people lock down. I got it. We can't keep this country closed. This is a massive country with a massive economy, Trump said in his final debate with the former Vice President Joe Biden. People are losing their jobs. They're committing suicides. In St. Louis, suicides have actually dropped during the coof. Data from the medical examiner's office show from March to September, there was 18 deaths by suicide in the town, down from 42 in 2019 and 39 in 2018. during the same 7-month period. So what? Things go up and they go down. You think that continuing lockdowns is not going to cause more of this? People losing their businesses, people struggling, people getting a slap in the face by a $600 stimulus per person per child, and then that is if they're making under $100,000, by the way, because a lot of people who own a business might be making more money than that, or might have a certain job and they might still be struggling because of layoffs or other things that are basically the effects of these governments deciding that they're going to do what they want to do. And it's a huge slap in the face to have an omnibus bill that throws out money to all these foreign nations, and suddenly to say, oh, well, here is the here's a little $600 while we give these nations, billions of dollars. And of course, then, you're printing ridiculous amounts of money and everything else, just devaluing the currency so that a new world order, as the saying goes, as George Bush liked to say quite often, will be put into place. Anyways, it goes over nationwide surveys, the data I just talked about, and the mental health behavior. This is an interesting one, too. I'm not going to get through all of this because I want to keep this kind of less than 50 minutes if I can. But the American Association of Suicidology. And what's the first thing it says? Oh, because of the coof pandemic, it wreaks havoc on the United States. They all have to go back to this freaking pandemic that isn't even that lethal. It really isn't. And it says, while suicide and suicide rates have most certainly increased in the last couple decades, a higher level in 2020 for suicides than for the coof is unreasonable and logically must be inaccurate, said John McIntosh, PhD, suicide statistic expert and professor emeritus of psychology at Indiana University South Bend. Oh, so that's like that's old Buttigieg's deal, right? Isn't that where he's at, South Bend, Indiana? Anyway, suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death, and COVID's current levels are only exceeded by heart disease and cancer. That is actually an outright lie. Like literally, that is an outright lie. Now, when was this put out originally? Well, November 2nd, 2020. It is not outpacing other forms of death. Like, it is very far low on the list. What people are actually dying from, by the way, are things like heart disease and liver failure and renal failure, diabetes, and then they had the coof. People are dying from pneumonia, and then they had the coof. So this is just outright nonsense. But it's why I brought it up, because these are the experts. Well, the data says otherwise. I just brought this up because, the virus is killing young Floridians. Race is a big factor. Well, hey, this guy looks fat to me. I don't care about his race. That is a fat belly. And I'm sure that's why he died of the coof. Sad. How about you stay in shape? Those people didn't exist years ago. So, Herman Castro, a 32-year-old manager of a McDonald's in Central Florida, died 2 days ago. He's a manager at McDonald's. Remember that those people are actually, they make pretty good bank, folks. He is among the more than 100 adults aged 25 to 44 who died of the coof in Florida last month. Oh, no. Why? Because they opened up? Yeah, this is August 11th. More than 80% of the coof deaths in Florida are attributed to residents over the age of 65. 80%! But since a surge in deaths in July, the number of younger people dying is also increasing substantially. Well, how about you be in shape? So these are the younger people which is a slim margin. The older people, I go through this all the time. Throughout the pandemic, Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida has stressed that the state's coronavirus crisis is largely limited to the very old. Yeah, in fact, that's what it's been limited to largely everywhere. Well, one person died. Well, do I get in a car accident and die? Someone dies in a car accident, and I say, well, no one can drive. You know, it's one of the biggest causes of death in the United States are traffic accidents. My wife and I were over to hang out with some friends a few months ago, back toward the end of summer, and we were going across the bridge over into Maryland, and right on the other side of the bridge, a tractor trailer had essentially like fishtailed and hit a car, ran over top of it, and then it exploded, and it was on fire. And for 3 hours, they were putting it out. I'm not joking. Does that mean no one else can drive or do anything? But data reviewed by the New York Times show that that's changing. Deaths are greater in July for residents under 65 than those over 90. Yeah, because you got rid of all the 90-year-olds who were going to die of this thing. Let's use some logic here, folks. Although they still make up a relatively small number of more than 8,000 total coof deaths in the state, the number of younger adults who died of these diseases quadrupled last month. Okay, yeah, because people are out. People are going to get this. You have to understand that life has an inherent risk. Memento mori. Remember, you shall die. Suicidality and death by suicide among middle-aged adults in the United States. Now, this came up weird, but it is from the SAM, HSA.gov data, blah, 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 blah. And what I'm going to read for you here is on just a little side notes. It says in 2009 and 2014, the National Survey on Drug Use and Health data indicated that middle-aged 45 to 64-year-olds had significantly lower percentage of suicidal thoughts and attempts. And it says 3.5 to 0.3% respectively. Compare that to 18 to 25-year-olds. Yeah, because they're having an unstable, time of life. Your brain's still developing. Your prefrontal cortex isn't developed. That's why the voting age should be 25, not 18. Anyways, it says according to the NSDUH data, the annual average percentage of middle-aged adults who had serious thoughts of suicide ranged from 3.3% in 2011 and 2012 to 3.5 and to 3.6 in 2013 to 14. And it continues that basically, it's changed. Data from the National Vital Statistical System show that 45 to 60-year-olds had the highest increase in death rate from suicide, 13.2 to 19.5 death per 100,000 between 1999 and 2014 among all age groups. Well, why? Because life is hard, yes, but it's also pretty good. It's pretty good in the modern age. Why? Well, probably because guys like this, and guys like this, and guys like, old creepy Sleepy Joe, and guys like this, because they've been selling you down the river for decades. And, the millennials, zennials, zoomers, whatever you want to call them, are supposedly coming into the world with less wealth than ever, as far as what has been passed down to them from their family. And then here from the Suicide Prevention Resource Center, this is the last thing, folks. I have rates by age again. So this goes through the age, and we can just see that this is from 2009 to 2018. This has been an uptick in all age ranges. And this is the chart I showed you earlier. Does anyone think this is going to get better by continued lockdowns, by destroying our economies, by essentially making ourselves weaker as a society? Do you really think that building back better is going to make anything better other than people being more and more on edge? I like this line here. The virus highlighted many vulnerabilities when the businesses, supply chains, economies. No, it didn't at all. In fact, what it highlighted was government mandated edicts that were not passed through the legislature. It highlighted the need for the grab of power by certain tyrants. And it highlighted that when the government is too much involved within our economic systems, everything goes poo-poo real quickly. And it has been like this for a century now. And it's not good, folks. So this is kind of just an addendum video to what I made yesterday. Even though I went, a good 50 minutes here. But I just want you to understand and think about these things. Like, what cost are we willing to pay in order to save just one life? Just one life. While our leaders, who are supposed to be independent and sovereign leaders, are quoting the World Economic Forum repeatedly. Who really makes the rules in our nation, folks? In our nations, I should say. These are puppet figures. Donald Trump was not, which is why he was hated. And unfortunately, I'm not, again, trying to be all doom and gloom, but I don't think he's going to be able to maintain the White House. January 6th is really the final date. And, we could say up to inauguration, there could be something that could happen, but pretty much as far as Congress and the Senate goes, it is the final date to have things certified. And they're not going to do anything. And the reason why they're not going to do anything is because Donald Trump didn't realize what he was getting into. I'm more than certain. I've said this many a times. He didn't realize how deep that swamp was. He was trying to, I think, work with folks that he probably shouldn't have tried to work with. But there's going to be a lot more suicide and deaths of despair. There's going to be a lot more overdoses coming up. And the reason why is because we're about to have a huge financial crash, the likes of which we have not experienced probably since the Great Depression. And I mean a real one, of course it is induced by poor government policy like this Federal Reserve policy here that is going to increase the money supply by another 30 to 65% in the next coming year. But this isn't a natural cause of any sort of free market capitalism, folks. This is all planned and controlled. And you better wake up. You better go get supplies. You better have ammo so you can hunt and defend yourself if need be, if you are so inclined to. You better have food and water. You better know how to make it, because things will get bad. And again, I hate being so black-pilled, so pessimistic. But this is just the world we live in, folks. It doesn't mean that there can't be great things within it and great corners of light that we can hold. But the Republic's been dead for a very long time. And, people arguing about this stuff, it's just a joke to say otherwise. It died in the Civil War, and if there was any vestige of it, it was destroyed under FDR. And we are in a globalist organization now. That's the UN. We listen to the technocrats, the YouTube overlords, and Google and all that stuff, right? Washington, D.C. does not care about you. I know. I'm growing up around D.C. I know people in D.C. I am friends with certain people who have connections. I have talked to, many a times, staffers, aides, who say they don't do much and nothing. Let me tell you, what is coming is really bad. All right, folks. Well, with all that, got to plug myself again. Once again, the Ints Justify the Memes every Wednesday, 7 p.m. That will be tomorrow, as today is a Tuesday. Unless you're watching this later on, of course. You can go over to ins_justify_memes on D Live. Go check me out on Rumble, please. Get me some subs. Bump me up here, man. YouTube will not allow me to talk like this forever. There's just no way. Obviously, I'm on YouTube. You can find me on YouTube. I got a whopping 90 subs, man. I'm coming up in the world. And if you wish to support me at all and my family, there's an easy way to do that. And that's just through Subscribestar. I might set something else up I'm not asking you guys to do that. I'm just saying, if you are so inclined that you want to send me $5 a month or whatever, hey, cool. I mean, I am putting this information out regardless. And I would appreciate it if I could continue to do this, and when things kind of settle down, that I could do this as a full-time kind of deal, because I like it. I do it anyways. But with all that said, this has been All Minus One, and I wish you all well.